Hi, this is Jen, and thanks for joining me. Today I am creating cards using a Michaels Hot Buy paper pad. I purchased this paper pad when Michaels had a sale a few weeks ago where it was, if you buy two or more, they were $4.99 a piece or something like that. So it was a super great deal. So I picked up several paper pads, and this is the first one that I'm going to be making cards with. It is called Sugar and Sparkle, and it's very pink. So when I started out with this, there's 24 pieces of paper in each 12 by 12 paper pad, or at least the ones that I picked up. And there are two designs for each pattern. So basically what I did was I took out one design of each. I was able to create 4 panels out of one 12 by 12 sheet. So I cut 2 panels out in 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and then I also cut out 2 panels that were 5 by 6 1/2. I also picked up this Hot Buy glitter paper pad, and what I really love about it is that there's 4 sheets, 12 by 12 sheets of every color, and it's a paperback glitter instead of kind of that shiny back glitter. I've completely stopped buying that shiny black glitter, blah blah, shiny back glitter paper, because it's very hard to die cut. I found it's very hard to die cut, so I always, when I buy glitter paper now, I always make sure that it's that paper back instead of kind of that shiny back. So here I'm just showing the cut apart pieces. There is a sheet of cut aparts, a sheet of 6 by 6 panels, and then a sheet of these strips. And so when I took the paper pad apart, I kind of just cut everything out and put papers together that I thought would work well together. And so for this first card, I really love this window pattern paper. And so I just cut it down to size to fit on a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 card base. And I titled this video Christmas Cards on a Budget because really the Hot Buy paper pads, when they are at a reduced price like this, are, I mean, you just can't beat it. They have some beautiful, beautiful pattern papers that you can make. I mean, out of all of the paper in it, you could probably make close to 80 cards if you were going to use up the whole paper pad. And that is just an excellent buy for $5. Understandably, you have to, have your card bases and your adhesives and all that. But creating cards like this is also a great way to kind of pull out those embellishments that maybe you don't get out. I know I don't get out my embellishments other than the stuff that I use all the time, like the drops. But it's good to kind of make cards and then you're kind of forced to use what you have in a way. Now, the only downside, I guess, or one of the downsides to these is that they don't have sentiments, but I have some Kaisercraft sentiment stamp sets or Christmas stamp sets that I've used in this video that are unfortunately no longer available, but you can use whatever sentiment stamps you have in your stash for these. For this card, I went ahead and I cut those 3 trees using a T ruler, or I just traced it out using a T ruler and then cut out by hand. And I adhered the 2 gray pieces flat to the card panel, and then I popped up the pink tree with the snowflakes. And then I just took a piece of, it's almost like rope, but it's not. It's a little bit thicker than like thread, so maybe kind of a twine thickness, I guess. And then I just took my fine liner glue and kind of just squiggled it on the left hand side of the trees to make it look as if there was snow just sticking to the trees. And this is probably my favorite card out of this set, with the exception of the last card. And then I just took some Ranger Distress Glitter in Rock Candy, a sentiment from my stash that I heat embossed in white. I just centered that over the trees, and that will complete this first card. And this paper pad is a lot of pink. I tried to bring in some other colors, but very pink, and I'd be happy to send these cards out. I'm really happy with how they turned out. For this next card, I took this cute little Santa from one of the pieces of pattern paper, and I'm going to be using this pinking pattern of the fancy scissors. And I just took this ruler. I don't even know what kind of ruler that is. I can only think of math when I see that, like it's used in math or something, or drafting or something. Anyhow, I use that to make a circle, and I just use my fancy scissors to go ahead and trim around to give it a little bit of a character. I don't know what word I'm looking for. I love these fancy scissors though. They're so many different patterns that you can use, and sometimes it's just a lot quicker to grab a pair of the scissors than it is to grab a die and run that through your die cutting machine. And so I always keep them on hand, and I just really don't want to get rid of them, even though I know they're like really outdated. I love them and I love using them, and I think they're super cool. So I went ahead and I added a strip of a silver paper on the very left hand side, and then I used a piece of gray pattern paper and then another strip of pattern paper that has a gold strip down the center, and I've adhered that to my card base. And then I am taking this piece and I'm just going to go ahead and glue that with my fine line glue and adhere that to my base as well. And then the sentiment that I stamped up is "'Tis the season to be jolly." And like I mentioned, all of the stamps that I use, pretty much all of them, are from Kaisercraft. And the reason is I love Kaisercraft stamps. They are acrylic stamps, which I know some people don't prefer to use, but Kaisercraft, the quality of their stamps is excellent. They stamp up really nicely, and I love that brand. So I'm using this it's called Fluffy Stuff by Cosmic Shimmer Creative Expressions, to give some dimension to his eyebrows, and I think it makes him look super adorable. And I also used some some Nuvo crystal drops in White Blizzard around the card. And I just think he's a super cute Santa. So this next card is very quick, very easy. This really pretty paper pattern with some ornaments on it. And I'm just going to take my tape runner and adhere that directly to my 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 card base. And then I took one of the cut aparts in the pattern paper and stamped up the sentiment from my stash that says "Christmas Blessings." And this is actually embossing powder. It's a Wendy Vecchi, I think it's called Cactus. Oh, I try to keep track of everything. It's called Cactus Flower. That's the embossing powder. A little brighter pink than what I wanted, but I didn't want to use another gold since there's already so much gold. And then I attached that to a piece of the gold glitter paper, and I'm using some liquid pearls, which I love my liquid pearls. I used white opal and a ballerina for this card, and I just put several of those around the card just to dress it up a little bit. So for this next card, I used this kind of octagon pattern paper, and I will also be using a piece of vellum. And the kind of sentiment piece, I guess you could say, it says "All is calm, all is bright," and that was actually one of the 6x6 papers, and I just went ahead and cut out around the lettering. And I'm going to go ahead and adhere that onto my piece of vellum, and then I will use a foam tape to pop that up. And then that's pretty much it. I added a few drops of the Dream Drops, and I believe this is Love Potion. Yes. So I added a few of those drops around the card, and that completes this card. And this next card, we got this cute little Santa again. He makes an appearance in a lot of these cards. So what I did was I first stamped out my sentiment in some VersaFine black. And then I'm going to use this kind of, it's not polka dotted, but the pink circles paper. And then I'm going to cut around the sentiment as close to it as I can, leaving just a tiny bit of space because I will be popping that portion up from the card and adhering those other pieces flat to the panel or the card base. So since the pattern paper is not like super thick, I go ahead and I take a piece of cardstock. I believe this is 120 pound, and I am adhering it to this thicker cardstock to give it some weight because I'm going to be popping it up, and so I didn't want it to be flimsy. And so I went ahead and I adhered that, and then I also put that panel on top of a piece of the glitter paper and just left a little bit of overhang so that it hangs over on each side of the card. And here I'm just lining up where I want the paper pieces to go. And so that piece is going to be popped up, so I want to make sure that it kind of matches up with the pattern that it was cut apart from. And I am using the liquid glue just because it is a lot easier to move around than the tape runner, which you can't really move around once you've got it placed down. And then I add some diamond stickles in drops around the card, and then I also put some on a paintbrush and put some on some of the white poinsettias that are on this card. And that will complete that card. I love the shine that the stickles gives the card, and that little pop-up piece. And the Santa, he's so cute. This is probably one of my favorite paper pads that they had. I picked out 2 more, and then one I got at home and I was like, why did I buy that? I bought it just because it was inexpensive, I think. And I don't know if I'm going to use it or not. But there's another really cute one that I have that I'm going to use. So this next card, I went ahead and took this pattern paper with the kind of the sparkles on it. And all I'm doing is just making score lines, kind of like flares, I guess. I don't know how to explain it. And I just did that on the top half of the card and just random lengths and random in between. I think I left 2 or 3 in between on most of them. And then I'm taking a piece of vellum again, and I'm going to stamp up my sentiment, and I will emboss that with the gold embossing powder. And the gold embossing powder I have is like super old. It's one that I bought when I first got into making cards, and I bought it at a yard sale, I believe, because that doesn't come in that packaging any longer. And then I put a few glue drops behind the lettering and then some double-sided tape along the sides. And then I thought it needed trimmed up a little bit, and so I took some of the blue glitter paper and cut some really thin strips, and I am adhering those across the top and the bottom of the vellum, which helps to hold the vellum down, as well as trims the card out a little bit and makes it not so plain. And the glue that I used for that was the Zig 2-way. I think it was the medium point glue pen. And the sentiment is "Believe in the Magic of Christmas," another Kaisercraft. And so I had cut out a poinsettia cluster, and I was going to use it, I believe, on the previous card, and I didn't end up using it, and so I will use it on this card. And I am taking the circle piece, which was a 6x6 paper, and which won't fit, of course, on a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 card base, and I didn't want to use the bigger card base. So what I did instead was I just measured out how much of that piece I was going to use, and I'm going to fill that up with a stamped sentiment, and it just says "Merry Christmas." It's really small, and I wasn't trying to make this look neat or clean, I guess, or straight even. I did not feel like kind of lining up every single one, so I kind of like that I like how it turned out. It might not be for everybody, but I went ahead and took my VersaFine Clair Morning Mist, and I'm using my VersaFine Clair, which is a pigment ink instead of a dye ink, because I know, like when I first started making cards and I didn't know about ink types, I used a dye ink on some paper and it sunk into the paper and I never saw it again. That might not happen with these darker colors, but I didn't want to chance it, so I just went ahead and used the Morning Mist, which is like a gray color, and then the I think it's Verdant. I don't know if that's how you say it. The green color, and it just says Merry Christmas. And then I took this panel and adhered it, and then I was like, oh no, I forgot to put my little circle underneath. And so I luckily was able to pull that up and slide that piece underneath. And then I go ahead and trim that down to size, and I add the poinsettia cluster. And then I add the sentiment in black VersaFine. And then I also use white Wink of Stella and some red Wink of Stella on his hat and on his beard. And so this is a bigger card. This is a, no, is this? Yes, this is a bigger card. I thought I didn't use a bigger card, but it still didn't fit on the card, so I had to cut it. So the size of that card was 5 by 6.5. I apologize. I said it was the smaller size at the beginning, but it was not. So this is another bigger card panel. This is 5 by 6.5. Which is pretty much what you find in the stores for the most part as far as greeting cards go. They're not the little 4 1/4 by 5.5. They're mostly 5 by 6.5, although there is variation. So I'm going to do more snow again. So I put down a piece of the pattern paper that kind of looks like fur. Up close it looks like fur. And I'm just doing that same thing that I did on the previous card with the trees, kind of squiggling back and forth to give it like a snow effect. And then I'm using the Arranger Distress Glitter in Rock Candy. And the Santa was just on a piece of pattern paper in the corner, and I went ahead and cut him out by hand, and he will be adhered to the card. And then I have this roll of, I think it's adding machine tape, and I've had it for a while. I don't even know where I got it from, but I have it, and so it's perfect because it's really thin. So I'm going to make a Santa's list with names on it for him to hold, and so I go ahead and cut that in half so it's a little bit smaller, and I'm going to take my VersaFine in sepia and a finger dauber and just distress the edges up a little bit. And then I took my Spectrum Noir, I believe this is a fine liner, not a fine liner, what is it called? It's called, they call it an art liner, and this is size 08. And I just write out some names, and then I'm going to take my pencil and curl up the top and the bottom. And then I just kind of glue it in different places and used foam tape in different places to kind of make it scroll or lift off the page a little bit. And that will complete that card. I really love the snow and the glitter. I think I'm going to use that on some more cards. I just really like the look. And since there's not a sentiment on the outside, I went ahead and put a sentiment on the inside. And that is actually a sentiment by a scrapbook.com set called Sassy Christmas. This next card I'm using a piece of the glitter paper, which is, it's not the silver, it's kind of like a white glitter paper. And I'm using this Dritz tool. And when I first started card making, I learned this. I was watching a Gina K video, and she used this, and I used to use this before I had any dies that had any kind of detail to them. So this is a really great tool. All I did was ran it over the paper, and it kind of made a design. It's really hard to see probably in the video, but on the still shot you should be able to see the design. It just kind of makes a little design, and really you can do anything with it. And it's called, the one that I have is, it's Dritz, and it's called a Rotary tracing tool is what it's called. And so I'm using Vellum on this card as well. I take the glitter paper and center that across the 4 1/4 by 5.5 card, and then I'm taking these strips of pattern paper and adhering them. And that middle that middle sentiment piece is popped up. And I believe that's all I do with this card. That sentiment did come in the as one of the strips. As you can see, it's kind of wonky. I did not really get that even. So for the last card, this is one of my favorites. I took a bunch of strips and a silver glitter background. So I'm using the silver glitter paper. And then just several strips of pink and grays from the pattern paper that came in the paper pad. Just cut down into various, mainly very thin strips, but not really anything that I measured. I just cut them out. And so I did that across the silver glitter paper, and then took this Mega Happy die, which is an Altenew die, and ran that through my die cut machine. I really love how that looks, having several different patterns on that word. And so then I took this Kaisercraft stamp set and Wendy Vecchi Make Art ink, and this is Pink Peony, I think. And I'm just doing second generation stamping. I'm stamping it up. It actually is very light, so I don't know if you'll even be able to see it in the pictures, but it is very faint on the card. But if you saw it in person, you would be able to see it. It's just really hard to see because it is such a light color and it is so faint. So I just stamp up several of those across the card panel. And then I'm going to take that happy die cut sentiment and use my fine liner glue to adhere that to my panel. But before I do that, I did add some foam tape to the back of that panel. I trimmed it down a little bit so it doesn't cover the entire 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 card base. And there's just a small border around the edges. Now I will take my fine liner glue and adhere that happy piece to the card. And then next I just took a sentiment that said Merry Christmas, and I just used the Christmas portion. I heat and embossed that in white onto a piece of pink cardstock, and then added a few sequins, and that completes that card. This is my second favorite. So I like the first card and last card the best, but I think they all turned out well. I was pleasantly surprised. I struggled a little bit with trying to figure out what to do with just pattern paper, but I really enjoyed this process. And let me know which card is your favorite, and if there is a paper pad that you have that you want me to create some cards with, please leave a comment below and let me know, and I will see what I can do. I do have another paper pad that I purchased that I will make another set of 10 cards with, and so I will get that video up probably sometime in the coming week. And that's it for me, I guess. If you liked this video or found it informative, please go ahead and give me a thumbs up. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you next time.